Today we are looking southwest on Vermont Avenue toward Lafayette Square and beyond it, the White House. As we sweep to the north, we see the Veterans Administration building, I Street Northwest, the building of what had been the Miners Union, now the Museum and Foundation of the Victims of Communism, then 15th Street, then MacPherson Square, with the statue of Major General James MacPherson, a Union officer, in the center. Beyond the statue, we see the continuation of Vermont Avenue. Then in Scott Circle, the statue of Lieutenant General Winfield Scott, a U.S. officer in the early 19th centuries, and the spire of Luther Place Memorial Church at the intersection of Vermont and Massachusetts Avenues and 14th Street. The focus of our attention today is the square in front of us, with its many tents where many reside. The city government has decided to clear away this encampment on February 15th, 2 months ahead of schedule, because of what the government calls, quote, high levels of illegal drug and other criminal activity that impede social service outreach and endanger social service providers. According to a letter quoted by the Washington Post on February 2nd, 2023. This video is being shot on Tuesday, February 14th, 1 day ahead of D-Day, and 4 days ahead of February 17th, when this video will be made public. On Wednesday, February 25th, the Catholic world observes Ash Wednesday, the beginning of Lent, a period of prayer and reflection on our individual lives and our communal lives as church and civic community. The particular focus is on sin in a broad sense and our need for rescue. In the Catholic world, the word sin usually means the personal sin that I do. What is rarely mentioned, if ever, is the sin done to me. The hurt I experience from other people, from institutions, including church, government, and business, and from natural evils like hurricanes and heat. In this square, we observe here an odd combination of sin done by us collectively to others, and the sin that sin in turn does to us. This collective sin in its most notorious form began in the 1980s, when hospitals and clinics for those suffering mental illness, including the effects of PTSD among military veterans and victims of abuse, were closed in the hope that community services and community agencies would offer help. Few did, and those who have been patients became homeless, and now the homeless are so numerous among us that they overwhelm the places we live and work. When I lived in Washington 30 years ago and commuted daily to the State Department, the homeless lived on grates above metro lines, including right in front of my office building. In the past 30 years, some people or groups have offered tents as shelters, which seems a great improvement to me, but it is an improvement, not a solution. The DC government and private agencies seem intent on bringing relief to those who live here, though the problem remains greater than the assistance offered, especially the problem nationwide. Today's first reading tells the story of God scrambling the language of those attempting to build a tower to the heavens. Our country and our culture suffer from a variation on that problem, the lack of a common language of compassion desire for justice, and concrete action. The consequence is a babble of empty rhetoric. In the gospel, Jesus says we have to take up our cross if we want to follow him. Caring for people without shelter is a cross our country will need to bear if those without shelter are to receive any respite. But would our culture, especially those at the top of the economic pyramid, be willing to give up some portion of their prosperity to help the homeless? The trend in our culture is toward an increasingly skewed distribution of income, such that fewer and fewer hold more and more. Unless that group and the culture as a whole changes its mind, we have little hope. Lent asks us to lead by example, to repent and resist the temptation to wealth. That's the gospel of the first Sunday of Lent. Then the Sunday readings invite us to follow the example of the Samaritan woman and the man born blind, the third and fourth Sundays, and to be transfigured so that we can help transform our country and culture, the second Sunday of Lent. That is our challenge. That is our opportunity. How do we choose to respond?